It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and with us to talk about some marriage prep suggestions and some reflections for the Catholic bride-to-be is Chloe Langr. Thanks for being here, Chloe.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle. It's good to be here.
Yeah, what was the most stressful thing about planning your wedding?
Oh, man. I think if I was to describe it, I'd say it's a death by 1,000 cuts, those tiny little details that I didn't even know existed until I started planning a wedding. Like, oh, we need to think about the details about serving people food, or what will it look like in between the reception or the ceremony and the reception. So all these tiny details that when you think about planning a wedding don't really come to mind.
Yeah, so I guess part of the challenge is how much of those things are actually important for us to be investing our time in versus what's really important. And I think that's one of the things that you're really trying to help us navigate here with this. What's your favorite memory from your wedding day?
I loved being able to go to Eucharistic adoration with my soon-to-be husband, Joseph, the morning of our wedding. We had decided that on our wedding day, it seemed to be that if we didn't see each other in the morning, we were only going to get to spend about half of the day together. So we decided to spend the morning together. We got married in another city, so we had to do a little bit of a drive in the morning. But we stopped into adoration and just sat with the Lord and praised him and thanked him for our relationship and our upcoming wedding. And just to have a moment of peace and quiet and calm before the big day was really joyful. So when I think back on that day, I think of that so fondly.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up with the business, especially when we've got friends and family that are in town that you don't see very often, to get kind of caught up with the party or planning part of it. That's a neat idea. What do you think in general is maybe one of the biggest mistakes that couples make in their marriage prep?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that I have fallen into the trap of too as well, thinking back on my own engagement, is spending so much time planning for the wedding and not enough time planning for the marriage. The wedding day is so beautiful. And that's not to say that your wedding day, you shouldn't put any time into planning your wedding day. You should. It's a beautiful day. It's an incredible sacrament, but it's a day. And a marriage, especially in the Catholic understanding of a marriage, it's forever. And so it's almost like when you're expecting a baby and you plan just for the labor, but you don't put any time into planning for what is it like to be a parent.
Right.
But for a marriage, to focus so much on the one day and then to miss out on planning, especially in this engagement, this season of preparation, planning for the marriage that's to come.
So how does that look? What are some of the things to plan for in a marriage besides just the wedding day?
Yeah. Some that come to mind are the more obvious ones, like finances, communication. What would we do as a couple in this situation? I think that a lot of Catholic marriage prep programs do a great job with giving couples a lot of suggestions for things to talk about, and then really taking the time to unpack those. Asking each other questions like, what do I think that marriage is? Or what are my hopes and dreams for our life together? Or what's something that I'd really love to accomplish with you in the next 5 years, 10 years? What's something that I'm most excited about learning about you as we get the chance to live together and build a life together and build a family together? So I think really just kind of big picture questions. They're sometimes easy to gloss over, like, this is my big dream for our wedding, but not our marriage. And so I really think spending time, creating the space to spend time together. I know one practical way that this looks for Joseph and I, thinking back on our own engagement, during the wedding week, which is typically kind of the hectic, everything falls apart week of a wedding planning, we took an evening that week and just spent time together not talking about the wedding. As the wedding was off topic. We could talk about our marriage. We could talk about our relationship, what we love the most about the other person. We weren't allowed to talk about the wedding. Again, not because the wedding's bad, but because it's so easy just to get hyper-focused on that. So really, I think practically creating space for those bigger conversations, those meaningful conversations.
But they don't fit as well on a Pinterest board. It's
true. There are no pretty pictures of good conversations.
But I think that's one of the things. There's an easy way to brainstorm and think about the wedding details because there's so many resources out there that are available. There's less so for a wedding. Now, your book is a great resource for that. That's helping that. But what are some other things that can help us stay focused correctly?
I think centering your engagement around prayer especially prayer together. In a marriage, you have the beautiful opportunity to combine your prayer life together as a couple while still having your own individual prayer life. But really, an engagement is a great time to start praying together if you haven't already, and ask the Lord for guidance. He wants us to have healthy marriages. He wants marriages to last. It's how they were created and what the design is. And so if you're asking him for the grace of enthusiasm for your sacrament, of passion for your spouse, those are prayers that he's going to answer. And so I think really centering all these conversations on prayer is a big part of that.
We're talking with Chloe Langr. The book is Created for Love, Reflections for the Catholic Bride-to-Be. And in here, you, as much as this is marriage prep and planning, there's also a lot about femininity and really kind of diving into what does it mean to be a woman and what is your role in the marriage and how that might be different from the role of a man. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm so passionate about is the feminine genius. It's something that John Paul II talks about a lot in his papacy. And it's an understanding of, you said it perfectly. What does it mean to be a Catholic woman in today's culture? In this book specifically, what does it mean to be a Catholic woman living out your vocation as a bride, and eventually, potentially, if the Lord's calling you, as a mother to physical kids too? And so when I've been diving into the feminine genius in my own marriage, what I found is the more that I become rooted in who I am and who the Lord's created me to be as a woman, the more that I'm confident in the fact that I'm his beloved daughter and the fact that he has a mission for my life, the more that I become the woman I'm created to be, the closer that I get to the Lord, but I also become closer to my spouse because he's there to help me to heaven. And if becoming the woman God's created me to be is going to help on the trajectory to heaven, it can only help my marriage. Growing closer to the Lord as the woman he's made me, or for the woman reading this book as the woman that Christ has made her to be, can only draw her closer to her spouse. And so that's one thing that I've loved diving into in this book particularly. What does it mean? The feminine genius is kind of a buzzword. What does it mean practically? And that's really what my hope was for these reflections that are tucked in there.
Yeah, and one of the things that you tackle is weaknesses, perfectionism, past wounds, a lot of these different things that are things to work on interiorly. How important is it to work on those things before marriage versus something that you work out during your marriage?
I don't think there's ever a wrong time to take time for healing. So if someone's listening to this and they're married, it's not too late. It's never too late to find healing from wounds, to overcome and strive for virtue and things like that. But, if we're taking the time in a season of preparation for a wedding to do things like pick out bridesmaids' dresses, plan a menu for a reception, get things in order for family visiting, block off hotels, all these kind of little to-dos that stack up, we should also take time in this season, especially it's a season that's focused on preparing your heart. And so what better thing to focus on in this season of preparation than healing and restoration and really getting to praise the Lord for the redemption that he's worked in your story, in your relationship. And so, there's never a bad time to heal, but I think that it's still important to take time during this preparation season of engagement to heal and to dive deeper into what the Lord has in store for you.
Well, that's another thing I don't think that we talk about whenever we talk about marriage prep is we talk a lot about the couple and what's going to happen when you're together and how you're going to have a family. We don't talk about, okay, what are you going through as an individual and what are you bringing into the marriage, good or bad, that maybe could be taken care of ahead of time and some issues avoided. And so I think it's really good to challenge people to think about some of these things. Can you mention just a few of you chapters and then sections and you kind of tackle a bunch of these different topics?
Yeah. The book is laid out. So exploring the feminine genius. John Paul II never gave a total definition of what he meant by the feminine genius or these characteristics that help women explore it. But one thing when you read through his text that you can kind of read between the lines and see that he emphasizes a lot is receptivity, a woman's ability to receive, both spiritually, but also with their husband in marriage, a woman's ability to be generous. And this isn't saying that men can't be generous, but a woman's unique ability as a woman to be generous. Sensitivity kind of gets a bad rap. It doesn't mean wearing your heart on your sleeve. It means being able to see the other as others, see them with their hearts. And then finally, maternity, a woman's unique ability to bring life into the world, whether that's through biologically with kids, but also spiritual motherhood. And so there's 4 parts, each centered around those different characteristics of the feminine genius. Within those, you will have 10 reflections that just really dive deep into what it means. So for receptivity, what's holding you back from being receptive to the Lord? Or do you trust God as a giver? Like, do you think that he wants to give you good things for you to receive? What does a woman's body uniquely mean? John Paul II says the ability for a woman's body to receive is just such a beautiful way of thinking of how we are all called to receive the Lord's love. And so each section really just kind of dives deeper into those 4 characteristics of the feminine genius.
All right. So what would be your number 1 tip for engaged couples?
I think it goes back to this. We said it before in today's conversation, but really to spend as much time, if not more time, planning for your marriage than you do planning for your wedding, or preparing for your marriage than you do planning for your wedding. And just to take time to make sure that your priorities are set only for the benefit of you as a couple and you as an individual as well.
And this is written for engaged women, but I think there's a lot of this that's applicable for the man as well, the husband to be, if you will. Also, as much as this is written for engaged people, I think if you missed any of this in your marriage prep, it's a great thing to go back and look at as a married couple to say, hey, what are some of these things that we need to work on, or I need to work on, or hey, we didn't even do this in our marriage prep, but this is something we can see is kind of missing now looking back at it. So what would be your number 1 suggestion for married couples that maybe didn't do proper preparation for their marriage?
I think it would be similar in some ways to what I would really invite engaged couples into, this idea that it's not too late. You're married. You can always learn something more about your spouse. You can always learn something more about your spouse. One of my favorite pieces of marriage advice that I was given in a retreat after Joseph and I got married was that as a couple, we get to convince the other that they're loved and lovable. And so even if it's just finding one way to convince your spouse today that he or she is loved and lovable, really to dive into this idea that it's a continuous learning process. There's new ways every day that your spouse is lovable. There are new ways every day that you can learn about your spouse. So don't give up. If you're hearing this conversation, and even if you've been married for decades, there's still something you can learn about your spouse. There's always something that the Lord wants to reveal about the way that he loves you and you together as a couple.
Well said. And this is so important. I think our kind of marriage prep in the Catholic Church really needs some extra resources like this. So this is going to be really helpful for anybody. Like I said, preparing for marriage, definitely, but also married couples. I think there's so much that you could pull out of this and really benefit from it as well. And specifically this written for women. So a lot of the feminine genius and things like that. So people should check this out. Where's the best place to get a copy of it?
Yeah, you can pick up a copy pretty much anywhere books are sold, Amazon, your local Catholic bookstore. You can also buy it directly from the publisher. The book was published by Our Sunday Visitor, so it will always be available there too. All
right. And people can find you at oldfashionedgirlblog.com as well. Find more information there. Such a great website. And the book has got short chapters, easy to read, little reflection in there too, and then some hand lettering as well on the cover, and within my sister-in-law actually did the hand lettering for it. So,
it's beautiful. She did such a good job. I was so excited to see her work in there. It's just really beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very cool hardback book. People should check it out. Created for Love, Reflections for the Catholic Bride-to-Be. Thank you so much, Chloe, for sharing with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Pat.